Cool.
Hi, this is Scott, Killer 3-Cylinder on Insight Central. Today we're going to shoot a video on how to install the one-piece aluminum belly panel that I make. Right here I have a belly panel laid out. This particular belly panel that's here is for a CVT car. It has extra spacers and an extra rub strip on it that the manual transmission cars don't require. And we'll move this in a minute and I'll show one that's right below it for a manual transmission car. We offer the additional hardware kit if you're missing hardware, which is the 10 bolts, the 6 clips, and the 2 front push pin fasteners. And then I have the tools laying here to be able to do this too. I have a small electric impact gun with a 10mm socket, clip removal pliers that when you want to remove these clips, you can grab the head of the clip when it's pushed in. These pliers grab the clip and pop the clip out. On the front of the car, there's a couple of brackets on the bottom of the radiator support. In many cases, we go to take these to put a panel on and we find that these brackets are bent like this. I've taken a bracket that looked like this, I've taken it over to the vise on the back of the vise and I've flattened it out with a ball peen hammer. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it back in the proper position with this pair of pliers. So this bracket should look like this when it's done, because these have to be square on the car, otherwise the panel will not fit correctly. So these come up and then the tabs get bent back out and these can be reused on the car. But these have to be square this way. And these are made out of aluminum. And then with the arrow on the top center part of the bracket right there, the arrow points toward the front of the car, toward the front bumper. And this gets installed on the bottom of the radiator support so that it clips to the panel. These brackets are the ones that will ultimately clip in there like this. So I'm going to set these out of the way. On the panel's designed in the front to use these 2 plastic push pins. These are the very front holes here in the panel. And so these push pins will actually go and line up through the panel and into the bracket that I just showed a minute ago. The side panel holes here, this is a factory bolt that has the shoulder on it. And the factory bolt fits in here and you still have a little bit of wiggle room through the holes to be able to get those in there when you need to. And the bolts that I use, the aftermarket ones, have a 1-inch washer and they're a 1-inch bolt, and that's a 1x6.0 bolt with a 10mm head. And if you live in an area that's susceptible to rust on the East Coast or up north or wherever you are, you may want to take some anti-seize type grease and coat these with anti-seize when you put them in. So I'm going to move the stuff off this panel real quick, and we're going to move over to the car in just a moment here. Let me set this aside.
Okay.
So now underneath the car, here are the front brackets that have already been straightened on this car, so these are ready to go. This has both front strakes in place, and the strakes actually have the proper factory little clips, the clips that I supply with my hardware kit. If you're missing these, they take the place of these ones and on the side pieces. And then in the rear, the rear cross member here, you need the factory rear cross member for this to move to hook into. This car also has a Fumoto valve on it for draining the oil. And the Fumoto valve on this car is turned to the side with the lever up near the top, and it doesn't interfere with the panel as long as it's turned in the proper orientation like this. So here's the 2 panels. This panel in my left hand is the CVT panel, and the panel on the right is the manual trans panel, and the only difference is the spacers, because the the CVT transmission pan is the lowest hanging point from the drivetrain, and we put that on there. When it goes in place, it doesn't actually touch, but if the wind pushes up on the panel a little bit and it flexes, we put the rub strips on there just in the event that it rubs. So we're going to install this manual trans pan on this car that's up in the air right now. So on the rear cross member here and on my panel, I have slotted holes on the back of the panel, and they all line up with the bolts in the place on the cross member here. So I've started the bolts, and we start them in, give them a few turns, and you can leave them loose like this to get ready to put the panel on. In this case now, the panel's going to go up and hook in underneath the front edge of the bumper and on the brackets, like so. And you're going to use your plastic clips, and you put a plastic clip in the hole, and then push it in. And you're going to do the same on the other side. This car's bent just a little bit. I got to get a screwdriver and move that bracket over just a hair. There we go. Snap that in. And then at the rear of the panel, where it lines up on the bolts, we're going to just take the panel and flex it forward onto the slotted holes, just like that. And it's in place right there. So, and it's hanging loose. Then I like to take the rest of the bolts that we use and start them on the sides before I tighten them up. And if you need to, you can put your hand up above and move the plastic around just a little bit where these go up and line in. Let me grab the little 1/4-inch gun again and tighten these up. I like to start at the rear and just push the panel up where it meets in there with one hand, and then with the other hand, we're going to tighten these up. Do the side bolts. And that panel's installed. So, and then over here under the oil pan, it has a certain amount of flexibility to it, but if it rubs on the panel, that's why the rub strips are there. So, but it moves up and down just a little bit right there. And then this one's got a little boing in it, but that's pretty good. That one's installed. In the future, when it's time to do an oil change, in the rear, back here, there's two 10mm headed bolts, and you can actually leave the big ones in that I just put in, and for an oil change in the future you can remove these and just take these ones out, And then the whole back of the panel comes loose without actually taking off the rear cross member. You can leave the cross member on the panel. That's it.